Hello students, it's your history teacher. I've decided to give you online lecture by video. It should be helpful for you, mostly for your better understanding of the topics. It should be really better when you will study from the presentation. The presentation, you will find it just here on Google Classroom when you will open the Middle Ages, the materials, and the PowerPoint. Even better when you will download it. Okay. After the video where I will explain some things that are written here, you can ask me any questions afterwards. You can contact me. I can even explain you some things like in some kind of like video chat or an email or whatever. I'm here to help you. So let's begin with our today's topic, which will be the Vikings, Islamic Empire, and the Crusades. You should already be familiar with that after the Vikings worksheet that all of you made, and also I already gave you the task to learn these topics, but this is just like really the help for you, just something like the revision. So first of all, you will like open the presentation, okay, you have already downloaded and everything, and you will go straight to Vikings. Okay, I will play the presentation. So let's begin with that. The Vikings, as you know, are people living in the area of Scandinavia. Scandinavia, these are the modern states of Norway, Sweden, Denmark mostly, Finland not so much. And we know these people not just like under the name of Vikings, but also as Normans, which basically means like people from the north, or Varangians. Varangians, this is just like the variation of Vikings. So this means the same. Vikings were experienced traders, sailors, and warriors. So mostly these three occupations they did. And they were known all around Europe and even in the Byzantine Empire, which we know is like modern day Turkey and Greece and this area. So really like in the southern Europe, they were known all around this territory according to their skills and experiences as traders, sailors, and warriors. For example, in the worksheet there was mentioned the word berserker, which was like Viking warrior, which was really kind of also dangerous because they were usually under some kind of psychedelic drugs, we can say, and they were really like really warlike, fighting until the death and so on. But also sailors, they were traveling to many other countries where they traded or they raided. So this means like they were attacking the other civilizations. They were stealing the things from them. They were also trading independent. Inconvenient conditions of these Norman people, because there was really like cold weather, there was not enough place for the agriculture. Everything led to the expansion. The expansion was mostly taking place between the 8th century and we can say the 11th century. They used drekar. This was their typical really long ship, able to transport over 30 men. So these are really long ships. You had it in the worksheet as well, but not under the word drekar. The Danes, these were also the Vikings, but like the Danes were the Vikings from modern day Denmark. They invaded the British Islands and controlled it until they were defeated by Alfred the Great and were assimilated. Okay, so we know when we look into the map, geographically, British Islands are very close to the Denmark and the Scandinavia. So this was, we can say, one of the really first targets. So they were attacking the British Isles and mostly these Danes. And Alfred the Great was the king of, we can say, Great Britain back in that time. So they were defeated in like the 11th century mostly, and they were assimilated. What does it mean to be assimilated? This means that these people, the Vikings, who were living in the territory already, they could stay, but they just had to they had to become the English, we can say. Okay, so their culture was assimilated. So they could stay to live there only if they wanted to stop raiding. They wanted to stop, maybe had their old religion and so on. Okay, this was like the only condition. Apart from British Islands, they also invaded France, but they were also defeated. So it doesn't mean that what it means. In the British Islands, for example, they controlled some territory, but they were defeated and kind of pushed out of the territory. But there was still their influence. In France, the same thing happened. So they were defeated. They didn't conquer all of the France, but they controlled still the north of the France, which is called Normandy. Also nowadays. Okay, the territory of northern France is known as Normandy. This is like it means like the area of the northern men of the north, something like that. So Normandy is not in Norway or Scandinavia, it is in France. Duke William the Conqueror. I have a little mistake here. It should not be N but M. But just I hope you all know that. William the Conqueror was basically just one of these Normans. So he came from France, from this region of Normandy. So his ancestors were Vikings, but he came from France, not from Norway, Scandinavia, or like the other parts of Scandinavia. Okay, William the Conqueror, Norman, from Normandy. He attacked the Anglo-Saxon king Harold. The Anglo-Saxon king, it means he was the king in the British Isles. So William the Conqueror defeated the Anglo-Saxon king, whose name was Harold, and it was in the Battle of Hastings in 1066. So in the 11th century. This battle is very important because the William the Conqueror became the next king of the Great Britain, we can say, the medieval England. By the way, about this Battle of Hastings, there was a great tapestry made. Tapestry is like carpet you can put on the wall. So it's like really huge. They made it a lot during the Middle Ages, and on that tapestry, the whole battle was pictured. And it is said that William the Conqueror threw a lance to the eye of Harold, and that's how he killed him. So the Harold was killed, and William the Conqueror, Norman from Normandy, from France, became the next king. The important thing you should know about the Vikings was that, for example, they contributed to the creation of Kiev and Rus. They, for example, reigned in Sicily, discovered Iceland, Greenland, and what's very important, that the first man who reached the coast of North America was Viking, and his name was Leif Erikson. This was like almost 500 years before Christopher Columbus kind of discovered America. So he was Leif Erikson was the first man, apart from, of course, like the Aboriginal men who were living, we can say like the Native Americans who reached the coast of North America. Okay, Leif Erikson. The next thing I have there are the Viking voyages, so you can see on the map the places they visited. We know that according to their literature, because Vikings wrote books with the stories which are called like the sagas, and they are like about all of the legends. And also we know that according to the artifacts, so the archaeology, we found, for example, remains of their ships, the Drekars. You can see the Drekar in the map in the picture. So that's mostly it. Okay, we can go on. The Islamic Empire. Islamic Empire is really strong connected to the topic of Islam. So for the small test that we will write, you should kind of think of that together. The Arabs, the people who established the Islamic Empire, were originally desert nomads, and caravans had to go through the oases where rich cities were created. Caravans, what is it? What it's not just like the car, the caravan, like van, but these are, we can say, the houses, the carriages with everything what these people, the nomads, have, and they have to travel with it all through the territory. So they had to travel through the oases where rich cities were created, like Mecca, Medina, and all the other ones. The Islamic Empire started after Muhammad founded Islam. So they basically became really the empire, so like one united empire after the establishment of Islam, which we know happened like in the 7th century. Okay, in 661, the Umayyad dynasty was established, and the center was moved from Mecca to Damascus. Damascus is is like capital of Syria, and this dynasty was kind of established like after the foundation of the Islam religion. The Arabs invaded the Iberian Peninsula, defeated Visigoths, and in the battle of they defeated Visigoths in the battle of Jerez de la Frontera in the 8th century. So they were expanding. Okay, the Islamic Empire was expanding. They were already empire, and they wanted more. Every empire that is already united wants more to move somewhere. The Abbasids. This is like, we can say, not like another dynasty, but we can see something like dynasty, similar to them. They ruled the empire from the 8th century to 13th century, and they divided the country into the provinces led by the emirs. Emirs were something like officials, and they had two important centers in Baghdad and Cordoba. Cordoba, we know that Baghdad is the capital of Iraq, and Cordoba is in Spain. It's the territory. In the 10th century, the empire started to fall apart. So between the 8th and 13th century, where the Abbasids ruled the empire, it started to fall apart. Later, the Arabs developed their own high culture. What does it mean, firstly, the high culture? High culture means literature, for example, music, morals, so like every philosophy and other sciences. Their culture was based on more influences. For example, the Hellenistic, if you remember Alexander the Great and the Hellenistic period of the ancient Greeks. So the Hellenistic was something between like Orient and Greek. Persian, this is like modern day Iran, so really like Eastern culture, and Egyptian influences as well. So when you combine that together, and all of their knowledges, like Greek, all of the knowledge these cultures had, the Hellenistic, Persian, Egyptian, it really helped to develop geography, for example, history, philosophy that was based on the teachings of Aristotle, medicine that was, for example, took over from the Egyptian knowledge. The most important man who was like the doctor was Avicenna. And literature, for example, 1001 Nights. I hope everybody knows about these stories. These are like fairy tales. And mathematics. So they, for example, developed like we write with Arabic numbers now. Okay, the Seljuk Turks started to rule in Asia Minor in the 11th century and caused the decline of the Arabian Empire. When they captured Jerusalem, the crusades started. You know, with Islamic Empire, the topic that is really connected to it are the crusades, because we can say that the crusades were wars, religious wars between Islamic Empire, so like the Seljuk Turks, and between the Western European kingdoms, which were Christian. So between Christians and Muslims, the Islamic Empire. They captured the Jerusalem, which was considered to be like the place where the Jesus was buried, and it had a lot of importance for the Christians. So that's why it had such importance for them. Okay, so please, you do not have to remember these battles and so on. I just want you to remember at least the culture. Okay, so and also where did they, which places did they invade? So Baghdad and Cordoba, that they were really expanding and so on. You do not need to remember the dynasties or the years and so on. Okay, that's everything. I just wrote it there for you to somehow have the information in chronological order. Okay, so you will know, but you don't need to know all of this for the test. So just at least culture and the provinces. Okay, and let's just go to the crusades. There were 7 crusades, in the 7 official crusades in the history. And these crusades were happening from 11th to 13th century, mostly. So for almost like 300 years. And they were declared, so they all started by Pope Urban II. So the Catholic Pope, who asked Christians to free the tomb of God from the Muslims. So the Muslims captured the Jerusalem where the tomb of the God should be, according to their knowledge. And Pope Urban II thought that it's like really against their faith that the Muslims should have it captured. Okay, so the first crusade was declared by Pope Urban II, and this is how it all started. So the first crusade lasted for only 3 years, and in this crusade, the Crusaders were able to capture Jerusalem for themselves and established the Kingdom of Jerusalem. So that is what happened during the first crusade. During the second crusade, the Crusaders failed, and the reign over the, let's say, Kingdom of Jerusalem was kind of regained by Sultan Saladin. Sultan Saladin was like the leader of the Muslims during the crusade. So, the first crusade, they succeeded. In the second one, they failed. The third crusade is considered to be very important because we call it also the King's Crusade. Po slovensky je to aj, že výprava korunovaných hlav sa to volá. This crusade is called like that because it was led by Richard the Lionheart for medieval England, Philip II Augustus for the medieval France, and Frederick I Barbarossa for the Holy Roman Empire. Okay, so basically kings of the three most important kingdoms of Europe were leaders of this crusade. So it was considered to be that it just have to succeed. They had the flag with the red cross. You can see it in the picture. It started to be really important. So in this crusade, they started to use that. They made an agreement with the Turks, so the Christian could visit the Jerusalem. This was the result of the third crusade. So the people, like the pilgrims, čiže to sú tí putníci, who want to visit the tomb of God, they can go freely whenever they want, but so they are protected by this agreement. But the Muslims were still occupying the Jerusalem. Okay, fourth crusade. The Crusaders captured Constantinople, which is modern-day Istanbul, and slaughtered its inhabitants and founded the Latin Kingdom. The Crusades were not just about freeing the tomb of God. It was also about expansion, of course. It didn't have just religious reasons. It was, we can say, just something like pretext to kill some Muslims. So this crusade is considered to be really wrong because it shows the Crusaders, like the Christians, in really bad light, because they, without a reason, slaughtered the inhabitants of Constantinople, and they founded the Latin Kingdom. So the Kingdom of Jerusalem is one thing, and Latin Kingdom was in the Constantinople. Okay. The next crusade that happened was Children's Crusade, but this one was not official. So it is when I will ask you how many crusades were declared, 7 of them were declared, but one was like unofficial. This unofficial Children's Crusade, it was not supported by the church officially, but they were basically sent by the church to the Holy Land. So the Holy Land is the Jerusalem, and they believed that the children are so innocent that they can peacefully convert Muslims to Christianity. Okay, so the Muslims will believe to the children, and the peace will be in all of the area and so on. But what happened was really away from that imagination. So most of these children were sold into slavery, and just few of them came back and were able to return to Europe, but most of them were just like sold, and not just by Muslims, but these children, for example, they didn't even got to the Jerusalem. Okay, so people who were responsible to get them there, they just sold them into slavery, usually. So the Christians also, not just Muslims, but of course, some of the children that really got into the Jerusalem, they also were sold, or I don't know what, nobody really knows what happened to the most of the children. So this was really like sad thing about all of the crusades, and the beliefs that children are the only group that can do it. The Fifth Crusade was led by Emperor Frederick II, who conquered the port Damietta in Egypt, and in negotiations he gained a part of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. So, for example, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Nazareth. So these three places were considered to be important because of the religious reasons. Okay, in Jerusalem, there's tomb of the God. In Bethlehem, Jesus was born. He's like the Jesus of Nazareth. So all of these places were important, and he gained these parts of kingdom by negotiations. So there were no massive killings. In 1229, he crowned himself King of Jerusalem. So this Frederick II became king. And then there are the last two crusades, one of them led by Saint Louis, IX of France, and the last one, the king died and his army was destroyed by the plague. Okay, so this is it. These are the crusades. You do not have to remember years of the crusades. I just at least want you to remember how they went chronologically. So what important things happened crusade by crusade. So they succeeded, they failed, they made an agreement, Crusaders captured Constantinople, then unofficial Children's Crusade, then by negotiations gained Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Nazareth. Frederick II became King of Jerusalem, and then the last two, and it all ended by King's army dying in the plague. Okay, that's it. And also things that are connected to the Crusades, they had just one goal: to conquer the Holy Land, which is mostly the territory of Palestine, which was failure in the end. So they didn't reach this main goal. But even though some very important things happened, so these are the results. To Europe, there was the Arabian culture was brought to Europe. So Hindu-Arabic numerals, for example, that we use today, and also other inventions. So like a lot of things from the medicine, the philosophy, and like really a lot of inventions that we use even today. Italian cities in the north, for example, Venice and Genoa, had the profit because they had the contact with Middle East. So these cities became really rich, and that is, for example, after they became the center of Renaissance, because only in the rich cities something like that can happen. The Crusaders brought to Europe luxurious goods and hygiene, because Europeans were not really into the hygiene. Actually, the Muslims were the ones that we thought hygiene from. And the other thing is that 3 orders of knights were founded. Ty orders to sú vlastne rády, čiže 3 rytierské rády. So, really the first one are Knight Templars, a religious and military organization formed in Jerusalem to protect pilgrims. They fought in the crusades. So these are basically the ones that, for example, protected the pilgrims when they wanted to visit the Jerusalem after the King's Crusade negotiated this. Okay, they also fought in the crusades. Then the Teutonic Knights, small voluntary and mercenary military membership. They were serving as a Crusader military order for protection of Christians in the Holy Land and the Baltics during the Middle Ages. For example, Teutonic Knights were also in Poland. Okay, so they were basically protecting the Baltics as well. So they were all around this like amber route. So this is this order. A Knight Hospitaller. These were the medieval and early modern Catholic military order to provide care for sick, poor, injured pilgrims coming to the Holy Land. So they were military unit, but in the same time they were not fighting in crusades. They were more taking care of the people, of the pilgrims, of the believers. Okay, so you already watched The Kingdom of Heaven, so this is like very good source how to know about crusades. Okay, so it should be really useful for you when you watched this movie. So that's it. And for your spot check that will take place on Wednesday, April the 1st, you will have to revise what we had before. The spot check will start on the topic of Frankish Empire. Okay, and it will end with the Crusades. So please just remember the really basic things will be there. So just dynasties, some of the dynasties, most important kings, the culture. Okay, it will not be hard, please believe me, not will be difficult at all. Very important thing for you is that there are links that you can open. Okay, so for example, this one, you can open it, and there are some, we can say, further information, so it can explain to you some things that will be really helpful. So this is, for example, about Carloman, so Charles the Great. Okay, there's the advertisement, but so on. It just, I will not play it to you now, but you can open it and, it can be really helpful, really. Okay, such links should be for every empire. I try to find the best video where you can have most of the information. So that should be it. Thank you. And, I hope that the spot check will be really easy for you and you will have just the best marks. Thank you very much. And I'm wishing you a lot of good health and good luck. Bye.